Practicing for a presentation is like eating your vegetables or exercising more. It's one of those things that most of us know is good for us, and we have the best intentions of doing it and improving our lives, and then for some reason, we don't. Stay tuned. Today, I am going to unpack how to practice even when you don't want to. Hi everyone, I'm Fia Fasbinder and welcome to Moxie Talk, where we help you find your voice, share your message, and lead with confidence. Today we are talking about how to practice and prepare for your presentations even when you don't want to. But before I get started, if you are watching me on YouTube, make sure to click that alert button so you get notified whenever I put out new content. And if you enjoy this video, please make sure to share it and subscribe to our channel. During all of my years of working with clients, it's always been a struggle to get people to practice their presentations. I have a few hunches why this is. Obviously, time is one of them. People often run out of time or simply don't have enough time because the presentation request was last minute, which I get is often the case in the real world. People also don't practice or rehearse because they don't know how, or they think nobody else is doing it, or they feel super silly doing it, or they're procrastinating and delaying the inevitable by avoiding it altogether. But the biggest reason that I found that people don't practice is they simply don't want to do it. And I get it. Preparing and practicing for a presentation is boring, let's face it. It takes discipline, it takes grit, and it isn't a lot of fun most of the time. But preparation and practice is literally the most important thing you can do to guarantee your success as a presenter. Here are a few of my favorite reasons why you should practice. Number one, things can and will go wrong in a presentation. We can't predict if the tech will work, or if an audience member will try and derail us, or if our laptop will explode in the middle of a presentation. But if we practice, we can stay the course and we're not easily flustered by all these external forces that feel like they're working against us sometimes. Number two reason to practice. When you practice, you build your confidence because when you get up to present for the real presentation, it literally isn't the first time you've delivered this. It's the fifth, sixth, seventh time. It's just the first time you've done it in front of an audience. Now, why would you leave an important presentation to do it the first time in front of a real audience? And number three, my third reason to practice, last but definitely not least, is mistakes happen in a presentation. You want to make sure that you make those mistakes away from your audience or your stakeholders, not in front of them. Look, nobody wants to discover that they're missing data, or their slide is a typo, or that they've said the word 17 times. If you practice, all of this occurs and can be fixed before you go live. Here at Moxie, we are firm believers that talent is overrated and that skill trumps talent when it comes to any kind of presentations or public speaking. I oftentimes tell my clients the story of Steve Jobs. Now, most of us consider Steve Jobs to be one of the best presenters of all time. But do you know that 2 days before every product launch, he closed shop for 2 days and rehearsed tirelessly? He even invited all of his staff into the theater with him to give him feedback, sometimes rehearsing past midnight. So while you may watch his presentations on YouTube and they look off the cuff and natural, it's actually the result of a ton of hard work and endless hours of practice, so that every element from vocal delivery, emphasis, pacing, pausing, stage movement is timed to a T. My rule with presenters is that nobody is better winging it. It may sound counterintuitive, but when we don't practice, we look nervous, stiff, Our timing is off. We don't appear natural at all. And when we practice, we actually seem more off the cuff and natural because we're able to stay present with the audience and we're able to avoid that deer in headlights feeling of, I have no idea what's coming up next in my slides. Now, I know in the real world, most of us don't have the time to practice like Steve Jobs did. But we usually have time to prepare and practice 1, 2, maybe 3 times. And still, we don't do it, even though we know it will improve our presentation by tenfold. So what is it that Steve Jobs had that kept him going and going, even when the going got tough? How do we stay the course when we're uninspired, unmotivated, out of that rah-rah state of, yes, I'm going to practice and this is going to be great, to, oh God, this is so time-consuming and boring. I'm just going to go off the cuff. Now, there's a lot of things that happen there. So I want to give you my top 5 tips to stay motivated and practice your presentation even when you don't want to. And let me say that before I go into this, I've done several videos about how to actually rehearse your presentation, the steps of rehearsal. So if you watch this video and you're feeling strong and gritty and ready to build in the mindset of a performer and an athlete and practice even when you don't want to, check out my previous videos on the steps of rehearsal. Step number 1 is to find your why. Study after study shows that when we tune into our why, or the larger purpose of why we're doing this presentation or why we're doing this difficult thing, we stay the course even when it's uncomfortable. Psychologists often talk about the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. This basically means the difference between internal motivators like I want to move up from director to senior director in my company, and external motivators like my boss is telling me that I need to lead this quarterly business review by tomorrow. Ugh. So you probably see the difference. When we find our why, or our internal motivators or intrinsic motivators, it's easier to keep our eye on the North Star or keep our eye on that prize and do this difficult thing. When I'm working with my clients, one thing I try to consistently drive home is that you need to find your why. Look, public speaking is uncomfortable. And for some people, public speaking is terrifying. And practice isn't always fun. In fact, most often it's not fun. It's repetitive and it needs discipline. So it's so important that you focus on something that will keep you going. Focusing on your why. Another way to think of your why, if you're watching this video and you're thinking, I have no idea what my why is, ask yourself this: how are you contributing or serving this audience? I mentioned some studies earlier on intrinsic motivators. Now, there are other studies that say linking your intrinsic or internal motivator with social connection is like pouring jet fuel on your motivation. So if you're struggling to find your why, think about how your presentation is contributing or serving this audience. I truly believe that all presenters are in a service position, whether we are suggesting a new idea, providing a solution, leading the path forward to a new strategy. Focusing on how you're contributing or serving is the way to go. Now, I know for me, when I'm not feeling motivated to create the content for these YouTube videos or put the final touches on a new training program, I lean in hard to the audience I'm serving and how my contribution will literally improve their lives. Sometimes I even visualize my audience as I'm doing this difficult thing. Number 2 is schedule everything. I personally live and die by my calendar, which means if it's not on my calendar, it isn't going to happen. And there are times that my calendar is so full that even if I wanted to squeeze in something, there is literally no free time slots, which is why I make sure that important things like practicing for a new workshop or observing one of my new trainers or even working with our slide designer to create the new slides, all of these are on my calendar. Does this sound like you? I know that many of us live and die by our calendars, and there are other people that prefer to not be tied to their calendar. But here's the thing with practice. I guarantee you that if you don't schedule your calendar with the practices, if you don't put this on your calendar, you're not going to do it. It is so easy to push off practice. With my busy executives, when I'm doing speaker coaching with them, I make them schedule their rehearsals in front of me while I'm in their office to make sure it gets on their calendar. Now, I know that sounds harsh, but it is so easy to brush these things off. It's so easy to schedule other things or say, oh, I'll get around to it. And then now my calendar is too full and there's no time. So I ask these executives to put it on their calendar and make a commitment to keep the rehearsal on the calendar and not cancel it or reschedule it unless it's an emergency. Rescheduling and canceling is obviously a procrastination technique. I understand that all of us are so busy and that some presentations are so last minute that you aren't able to block off time in your calendar ahead of time. So here's my thoughts on that. If it's an important high stakes presentation that you know about ahead of time, block the time off on your calendar to practice and don't cancel it and don't reschedule it. If it's a last minute presentation, can you block off an hour to get your thoughts together, to get your thoughts down on paper, put your fingers to laptop, or even maybe run it once aloud? I truly believe that blocking off time on your calendar to do this, despite all of the other demands in our crazy schedules, is the best thing you can do to help yourself to commit to having a successful presentation. Number 3, prepare to change the channel. Now, when I'm coaching clients, I always talk about the different voices in our head. Most of us have a voice in our head that is full of negative thoughts, telling us that we shouldn't do certain things or that we're not good enough or we'll never be good enough, so why even try, etc., etc. We all know this voice, right? Well, I refer to this voice as a really bad DJ on a radio station called K-Crap Radio. And this DJ spews negative comments on this radio station in your head all day long. And the volume on this channel gets really loud, sometimes, especially when we are giving important presentations or when we're not feeling like doing this difficult thing because it's hard and uncomfortable, or when we're feeling afraid. Now, this DJ on this K-Crap radio station is what psychologists refer to as our negativity bias, which means that we pay more attention to negative experiences than positive ones. They say that negative experiences stick in our head like Velcro, and positive experiences are repelled in our head like Teflon. Now, why is this? Well, we are hardwired to pay attention to the negative. Back in our caveman and cavewoman days, doing anything scary or uncomfortable could mean sudden death. Life was dangerous back then when humans were just evolving. And in order to ensure our survival, we became hardwired to crave safety and comfort because it was a much safer choice to assume that rustle in the nearby bush was a saber-toothed tiger rather than just say to ourselves, it's probably nothing, I'll just breathe through it. But our modern day brains do not know the difference between danger from a saber-toothed tiger and fear of giving a presentation. Our brain just knows fear and discomfort. So this means that when our brain is going to feel something uncomfortable or possibly unsafe, it's going to deploy all of its tricks to get us to avoid doing that uncomfortable or possibly dangerous thing, like practicing to give a presentation. And one of this DJ's tricks on this K-Crap radio station is to blast something in our head to get us to stop doing this thing. But we know better, right? And if we prepare for K-Crap radio to start blasting negative messages at us when our alarm goes off to sit down and begin working on our presentation, we can be prepared to change the channel to a more positive radio station, the one that has the DJ that's your inner coach, motivating you and pushing you to stay the course and focus on your why, even when it's difficult and uncomfortable. Number 4, just show up. We've all heard the Nike slogan, just do it. But in my opinion, the most important part in ensuring that you do something that you don't feel like doing is just show up. Because once you're there, whatever there means to you, it's much harder to back down, turn around, or talk yourself out of doing this thing. Most of the time, if you can just get yourself there, whether that's to a specific room to practice or a dress rehearsal or even back in your office in front of your computer, you'll commit to doing the thing even when you don't want to. For me personally, when I'm running at 5:30 a.m. in the morning, I never want to do it. K-Crap radio station gets super loud in my head as I brush my teeth and put on my workout clothes. Things like, you should just go back to bed. One workout doesn't matter. You can miss it. It's not gonna, you're not gonna make a difference anyways. I'll just work out 2 days the next day, right? I have to turn down that voice, that K-Crap radio, literally trudge myself out the door. And I know that if I force myself to get out the door, then I'm gonna do the workout. And this is no different for my clients. When everything in them wants to back out of a dry run or sitting down to begin crafting their presentation, and they have every excuse in the book, which, by the way, behind all of those excuses is usually fear, for me as well, I can just get them to go to that place. I know they'll do it. They'll do this thing. And by the way, once you do that thing, and in this case, that thing is practicing, you always feel better. You always feel more accomplished and more successful. Nobody has ever regretted rehearsing a presentation, just like nobody has ever regretted working out or going for a run. I always say, I don't like running, but I like to have ran. Because nobody ever says, gosh, I wish I didn't go for that run, or I wish I hadn't put in that hour of hard work on my talk. We always feel better afterwards. So keeping this in mind, if you can just show up, you'll do the work. Number 5, last but not least, hold yourself accountable. The easiest way to make sure that we do something we don't want to do is to make sure that someone else is relying on you. So to continue on my running story, what I didn't mention to you is that aside from just showing up in my driveway, was that my running partner was waiting out in that driveway for me. And if I didn't get out of bed and just left her in the dark and cold at 5:30 in the morning, she would be furious. So having an accountability partner is not only a sure bet and a guarantee that you're gonna do these hard things that you don't want to do, but it also, I think on a more positive note, helps you feel part of a team or a community or something bigger than you. It's that social connection that we talked about earlier in the video. Look, it's difficult enough to do these things that we don't want to do. But if we have somebody not only relying on us, but cheering us on when we need it, it's so much easier to stay the course. With my clients, I always encourage them to find an accountability partner that will push them and give them tough love even when they have the most clever of excuses or justifications of why they shouldn't practice or something else is happening in their life, so they are going to back out of the practice. And this accountability partner should also have skin in the game, meaning they are working on the same presentation as you or a similar presentation, or they're on your team or on a similar team, so that you both continue to motivate and encourage each other even when you don't want to practice. So there you go. These are my top 5 techniques to ensure you practice even when you don't want to. As a recap, find your why, schedule everything, prepare to change the channel, just show up, and hold yourself accountable. I hope this video is valuable. I hope it helps you go to your computer, go put pen to paper, fingers to laptops, stand up and do that hard practice, because it will definitely ensure your success. And if you found this video to be valuable, please pass it on to somebody that you know will benefit from some little motivation on how to practice even when you don't want to. Last but not least, if you want to find out more about what Moxie Institute does, check out our website, moxieinstitute.com. Until next time, make sure to live brilliantly, lead boldly, and speak with Moxie.